Right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining this morning's webinar. I appreciate you taking time out your busy days to join us today because we are feeling the love, and we are going to talk today about how you can maximize your online fundraising through CRO. We're really proud to work with lots of not-for-profit and charity clients, and we'll talk to that in a second. But we're really pleased today to be joined by one of our existing clients at London's Air Ambulance Charity to talk you through what we're going to cover, which is a lot in just 30 minutes, but we'll try and get through it as best we can. I'd really encourage you as well, if you do have questions, please feel free to drop those into the question Q&A section of the Zoom. We'll provide my email address at the end as well, so please feel free to drop in questions and we'll come back to you and respond to those separately. So engagement very much encouraged. As you can see, fundamentally, we'll cover off today an introduction to CRO at a very basic level. Also, why CRO is vital for fundraising and some examples of why we've seen that for some of our clients. But then also how, and importantly, really, how to deliver CRO success in 3 to 6 months in kind of a step-by-step process. Our structured approach, why CRO doesn't have to break the bank as well, and try and dispel some of those myths we see, which is our personalization and conversion rate optimization is exceptionally expensive. And as we've proven working with the team at London's Air Ambulance Charity, it doesn't have to be that way. Peter, who will introduce himself shortly, they very kindly allowed us to use some of the examples of work we've done with them, and we'll also provide a getting started checklist as well. So hopefully when you get to the end of this, hopefully you're feeling inspired to either improve your CRO or get started and provide you a checklist of what we think we should do. My name is Ross Britton. I'm Chief Operating Officer at Equimedia, and I've been leading the digital experience, web design development and conversion rate optimization team for a number of years now. And I've worked directly with Peter. Peter, do you want to introduce yourself quickly?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Peter Livingston. I'm the digital consultant and senior digital manager for London's Air Ambulance. I've been here for 4 years now, right from the time of the delivery of a new website, which is our current website, which we did in conjunction with Ross and his team.
It's a great experience of that, and we'll kick off firstly just with a quick introduction to conversion rate optimization. And one of the first things really is, as I said, we love working with not-for-profits. We've been partners with London's Air Ambulance now since 2018. On the right-hand side, there's a mix of brands that we used to work with and a mixture of brands we still work with. I think some of our former clients are even here today, which is brilliant. But in terms of our journey with London's Air Ambulance, we delivered them a new Drupal website back in 2018. We even got that nominated for a UX UK award, which we're really proud of, in partnership with the LAA team as well. And continuous infrastructure and website developments over time led us to a point where we were, in 2020, we wanted to make sure the website continued to move forward. And certainly one of the things that we found now is, you can't just leave a website even for 2 or 3 years and then just think about redesigning it. It needs to be a continuous process of optimization, and that's where CRO comes in. And we've been working with London's Air Ambulance Charity on CRO for a couple of years now, helping to improve donation conversion rates, and we're going to show you some of the tips and tricks of how you can do that today. So what is CRO? Basically, at a very basic level, website optimization has 2 basic schools of thought. One is make changes and hope for the best. And the other one is to research, analyze, find where the problems are, and then test solutions to prove that there is, in fact, an improvement. And that is fundamental to who we are as a business and how we approach all website UX and all website optimization, which is, let's get into the data, let's understand user behavior, and let's form good hypothesis and optimize the website based on what our users are telling us. And that really is an important point. So rather than just saying, we think this looks great, or this is what competitors are doing, so could we copy it? Let's see what we can actually do that's better than our competitors and based on what our customers are telling us. And on a fundamental level, CRO isn't just about conducting random tests that are backed by no research insights that will only waste your time and money in the long run. It's all about collecting that quantitative and qualitative data that help you formulate those smart hypotheses and give you a higher probability of hitting the jackpot. So our recommendation when we work with all of our clients on CRO is always the same, which is don't just conduct random A/B tests. Don't make random design decisions that are backed by no research or no data or insights. You will end up wasting your time, your team's time, your agency's time, and your money in terms of investment as well. And obviously, within any not-for-profit, the money you invest is really important. It could be going to really great causes, and we want to try and amplify that and make sure it's not wasted on needless random tests. So collecting that data is fundamental to who we are. And I know Peter and the LAA team and I were very, very focused on making sure that anything that we do with the team is backed by those data insights.
I think it's a very valid point, Rosso. It's just to jump in, is that our philosophy is really to be data-led in what we do. We need to understand why we're doing things, and we can't do that blindly. We need to have that data to know also where to focus our attention to as well, because we need to be efficient with what we do.
Absolutely. And that's also important in terms of why CRO is vital for fundraising. Peter, do you want to cover off this example, I guess, a simple test that proved to be really impactful?
Yeah, so again, that's going to be a common theme through the presentation, is being data-led, but I think a key takeout from this slide is that the testing doesn't have to be complex. This was a simple test we ran to really encourage our visitors and people coming through the donation funnel to go through to the completion. So the simple test there was to put that prompt at the top of the donation form, telling our users that it's only going to take them 60 seconds to go through the donation form, because when you present it with a page with a number of fields for you to complete, it can be off-putting. So by putting that prompt there, we had a 47% improvement in our completion rate. So a simple test, simple A/B test with a great result.
Absolutely. And it's all about managing user expectations. And again, this was backed by the data and the insight we got from various bits of analysis, which we'll get into shortly. But this is, I guess, a really good high-level example to say this doesn't have to be complex. It can have a really big impact. So that's why, that previous example is why it's important, because actually a 47% increase in conversion rate from top to bottom of the donation funnel could yield pretty big returns. And especially when you pair that with your media budget. Now, obviously, we're all trying to run various activity, whether that's investing in PPC, SEO, paid social, running events, which are becoming obviously more interlinked with digital over time. Direct mail campaigns, lots of money being spent on these things, and valuable pounds and pence for only not-for-profit and charity. And why we think CRO is so important for not-for-profits, and I think largely underutilized, especially across the charities that we see, is you need to make sure that fundraising budget goes as far as it possibly can be. And whenever we're talking to new CRO clients, we always say the same thing, which is don't throw your money into a leaky bucket, the leaky bucket being the website. So have a real think about where your media budget is being spent. Are your landing pages optimized? Do you understand how your users are behaving after they visit the site from, say, PPC or paid social? And again, that's where we can help. But that really is the fundamental basis of why we think CRO is vital for any not-for-profit fundraising. And quick stop, and we'll do some top tips as we go along, but this really is something that everyone should be thinking about. We have a blog about Google Ads Performance Max, which some of you may have heard of, some of you may not have, and I encourage you to kind of raise this with your agencies, as if you haven't at least had this discussion already. Obviously, the future of digital marketing, whether that's in analytics or in targeting, is going to be in AI and machine learning, especially when third-party cookies are retired, whenever Google decide it's so. So have a look at this blog, all about Google Ads Performance Max. It's all about how you can target through AI and machine learning with Google activity, and we have an inkling into the future, obviously given our partnership with Google. So if you're not testing this in Q2 or Q3, it's probably something you should be thinking about testing. It's very relevant for e-commerce businesses and anything with an online transaction. So have a read of our blog and feel free to get in touch if you've got any questions. So getting to the meat of our presentation today, really, it's all about how we can deliver CRO success in 3 months. We've talked about what CRO is. We've talked about why it's important. But actually, you've got to get on and make those things, make those changes happen. And this is a great example of how we made it happen. So again, for us, being data-led meant that we undertook a user journey analysis piece of our website. So looking at key areas where our key landing pages, how they're performing or how they're not performing. So we needed to understand where we needed to focus our attention. And also we analyze each
field within our donation form to see how they're performing or not, and where we can identify where there's an issue. Out of that data piece, we developed a roadmap, and within that roadmap, we had 2 monthly experiments to run, and we prioritised, and we'll cover that off in a bit more detail later. But by taking that approach, we've had some great gains. So as you can see, 29% increase in our conversion rate. We've had 11% increase in traffic through the funnel, and also just the revenue. And we compare the revenue generated through our donation form, and we're talking one-off cash donations here. You compare that to where we were 2 years ago before we started this program, it's been a significant increase, which is quite important for us, especially now as we went through COVID, where we couldn't do any face-to-face fundraising. We really needed to make sure our digital channels were efficient and we were converting as much traffic into revenue as possible.
Yeah, and that's a really important point. Is it's not just about the volume of donations, it's about the quality of those donations and the value of those. So Peter and I were looking at an experiment a couple of weeks ago that's I think still ongoing as it stands, which isn't showing a massive improvement in actual conversion rate in the donation funnel, but in linking it with our GA data, we're seeing a higher average donation value. So even though Optimize, our A/B testing tool, might not be telling us it's making a difference, the actual data in terms of donation revenue is telling us there's a significant difference. So how do you deliver success in our 3 to 6 month roadmap? And the answer is you need the right mix of data, technology, and people. If you go to our website, that's a theme that runs throughout, which is it's all about you need really good data to make good decisions. You need technology to both capture that data, but also execute the insights. But of course, you need really great people. Which is, we're working in partnership with clients like Peter and the London's Air Ambulance team. It's about how we can work in partnership to deliver the best collaborative effort possible. And that data, technology, people theme is really important for CRO especially. You need a really good structured process, which we're going to talk through now with examples for each of those 6 steps, data gathering methods, of which there are a multitude of data gathering methods, an A/B testing platform, the right team of various skill sets. CRO can be looked at as just a one-man band approach, but actually the best results come from the collaborative insight across disciplines. Really good tracking and reporting, and we'll come on to GA4 and how that can have a big impact in the future, and really good management tools, of which I'm sure you're aware of. Lots and lots of different management tools, but again, really good management process is essential to execute good CRO. So if you're thinking of starting up a CRO program or revitalizing your current one, these are the 6 things I'll probably structure that around. So here's our step-by-step guide. I'm not going to go through all of this in detail now because we obviously don't have the time to do so. However, it really is a cyclical process, and that's the thing we're trying to communicate within our specific CRO structured roadmap, which is you have to start with really good data at the start, and we are going to labour the data point because actually data-backed hypotheses is essential for success. And we know from our experience that we tend to deliver for clients somewhere between a 40 to 50% win rate on A/B tests and conversion rate optimization experiments, whereas the market average can be anywhere around 20, 30, even below that percent. So we're really proud of our kind of structured approach because it helps deliver us more success, which is ultimately what we're after. So we'll talk through each of these 6 steps now, but yeah, feel free to ask us if you'd like more detail on any of this. So Peter alluded to this, but the first thing you need to think out, especially in your discovery phase, is firstly, where are the issues and why is there an issue? And Peter alluded to user journey analysis, which is fundamentally a bespoke thing that we do within the agency, which is we can take your data out of Google Analytics and we can map all of your user journeys in great detail from the first point somebody lands right the way through to which pages they're touching through to a designated conversion point. You can obviously segment that by device, by channel, by new versus returning customers, lots of other segments as well. But really it's about understanding what are our high volume, high converting routes to donation, and how can we make small conversion rate improvements on high volume sections that will deliver a big difference. But then also what are our high volume but low converting areas, and actually by making, again, we can make some fairly quick wins within those segments. And one of the more important things that we do as part of that very detailed process of doing user journey analysis, where we are identifying the where, and user journey analysis is about identifying where there are the issues, is to actually say, well, if we improved conversion rate on this between this particular page on this particular device by 5%, we can actually measure that impact in terms of revenue, which makes it much easier for you as as product owners, as business owners, as marketing managers, as directors to produce a business case to say we should be doing CRO, because if we actually increase conversion rate from here to here by 5%, it could equal an extra £5,000 in donation revenue per month, for the sake of argument. So that's where user journey analysis is important. It gives us a really detailed idea of where users are potentially having issues, but also where our potential improvement points that are going to drive ROI are. And I mentioned very briefly earlier about Google Analytics 4, and this again is a little top tip just to break up the content, which is obviously majority of you would have likely seen that Google announced that as of July 2023, Google Analytics 3, otherwise known as Universal Analytics, will stop collecting data. And this is quite a big deal within the industry. The differences between GA3 and GA4 are quite significant. And one thing I'd advise you to do is have a look into that. And we have a blog that we released last week that shows you kind of what those changes are, what it means for you, and how you can potentially prepare. But if you're not thinking about getting your GA4 property set up by the end of this quarter, you should be really, because it's going to be a really important part of future marketing. And this quite neatly links back into what I was saying earlier about AI, machine learning, and performance max in a world where there will be a cookieless future. So have a look at GA4. Please do read our blog, and any questions, please do ask.
So as we talked about, we've identified where there may be a potential issue through all the data analysis and user journey analysis pieces that we do. But we need to understand why is an issue. So the tools that we use is Hotjar and for heat mapping. So we can see that online behavior on the page, but also too, we especially the design phase of the website, some user testing as well. So get some real data, get some real user testing analysis pieces in there, really to help form and inform what we're going to do to develop that hypothesis and that experiment. So quite key tools for us to utilize as part of that design phase to create the experiment before we move forward. And what we don't want to do is make an assumption of what we think the problem is, because you could waste the opportunity for the experiment. And also too, this reinforces why we should be doing experiments and why we do CRO. We might have a concept of why there's a problem and might think this is a solution and deploy that to live, but actually that could exacerbate the situation. So for us, in terms of mitigating risks, this is why we also undertake testing, to confirm that we've got the right solution in place or not.
Exactly. And then this links back nicely to what we said at the start, which is both quantitative and qualitative data. Your user journey analysis, your GA data is your hard quantitative data, which is the where. This is your qualitative insight that provides more meat to those quantitative bones. And obviously off the back of that, we produce a variety of different hypotheses which we can test, and prioritization is key. So we've identified a problem, we know where it is, we know why it's a problem. Now we need to propose the solution. And what will often happen is you do all this detailed data analysis, but you've got 100 different points, but now you need to start prioritizing which ones you work on. And this is often a challenge with any CRO program, especially if it's an immature CRO program where the website needs quite a lot of work. Is you need to really prioritize the things that will have the biggest impact. So this is an example of one we did for a charity client where it was all about adoptions. And it really is about prioritizing all the different testing actions to make sure you prioritize the ones that will deliver the highest business impact. And that really, in the context of this webinar, is about driving higher volume and value of donations. So prioritizing hypotheses is super important. And in terms of how you write a test hypothesis, again, this is an example of what a hypothesis might look like, but it's all about testing hypothesis and trying to hopefully prove that you're right, that you expect that by changing certain elements that you'll have an impact on bottom line. This is an example when we worked with a donkey charity client a while back. But yeah, hypotheses are really important, and as I said, we have a really good win rate of proving our hypotheses correct, and that is all down to that kind of data-led approach.
Which leads on to this example. So taking that data-led approach, and looking at what we had an issue here around the completion, and the data led us to believe that the order of collecting card details and our marketing opt-ins was causing a barrier to completion. So we ran an experiment using that and using Google Optimize, which Ross will talk about. We switched the order of those two fields. And by doing that simple change with the data that we had a 48% improvement in our conversion rate or completion rate. So again, a simple, subtle change, but big improvement, but backed by data.
And if you think of all the changes you could make, if you have a list of 100 things that can make a difference, we saw within the data that something as simple as switching fields could make a difference. We didn't expect it to be quite as big a difference, which is a nice positive surprise. But always be led by data, and simple things will come through. And I mentioned at the very start that CRO doesn't have to break the bank. Your GA data, for example, in doing your user journey analysis is, you've got to have the right setup. So you need the right people to optimize that data and that technology. But with good data, you can produce reports that will provide you a good level of insight. Google Optimize is a free A/B testing tool. Obviously, is a free tool. It has limits in terms of session volumes, etc. But it's something that we use in order to, as a really good proof of concept. So if you were going to do a 3-month trial for a CRO roadmap, for example, it'd be a really good tool to use. And moving on to another example of a free tool is something like Google Data Studio. So the previous example we gave, where it was all about switching the marketing opt-ins and the actual card details fields around, came from a Data Studio dashboard that we created, which again was all about taking really good data, using the technology with Data Studio and the Equimedia people pulled together a dashboard where we actually tagged each individual field within the London's Air Ambulance charity funnel. We were able to analyze sequential field progression. So how many people go from field 1 to 2, from 2 to 3, etc. Which fields have the most validation errors? So are there specific fields that people are struggling on? And that helped us identify which fields were causing the drop-off. And we were obviously seeing a drop-off between card details and marketing opt-ins, which was causing an issue. So it seemed that just by switching those around based on the data, it would make a difference, and clearly it did. So that level of data insight, again, Data Studio is a free tool. It requires the people to set that data and that technology up in the right way. But it can be super powerful. And this is real-time data as well. So have a think about how you can use these free-to-use tools like Data Studio, like Google Optimize, like Google Analytics data, and not just the Google stack, but there's lots of other options as well to help power your data-led approach to CRO. And I won't labor these too much, but it's really important key considerations, tips when running CRO. So one of the things that we find is, you can be tempted to pause an experiment too early. You need a really good balance of low versus high risk experiments. And that kind of culture of experimentation and the ability to be okay with failing fast is really important in CRO. Just because it's failed, it doesn't mean we didn't learn anything. And that's a really important mindset to get into. And we'll talk a bit later about getting into the CRO mindset.
Just on that point, Ross, failure can be a good thing. For me, if an experiment fails, it validates why we do CRO, because we could have deployed that change to live and had a detrimental impact on our live site. So to see a failure in a CRO program is not a bad thing.
Exactly, and that's that mindset, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I've just seen one of the questions is, will the recording be shared around after the session? Yes, if you were to get in contact with us directly, we're more than happy to share the recording, so that's no problem. So we've gone through the process of analysing the data. We've written a hypothesis. We've designed and tested an experiment. We then need to review the data. And this is an example within a tool called VWO, short for Visual Website Optimizer, which is another A/B testing platform that we use. But the important point really when you're analysing the data is actually let's look at what conversion rate improvement we've made over the course of 2 to 3 weeks, and try and put some real numbers around it to say, okay, well, if we put this specific thing live, what can we forecast it will have an impact on from a conversion and a revenue perspective? So that's a really important part of reviewing the data, but also segmenting it by device, by source, by day of week sometimes as well. You can really get down to that level of detail. I was looking at an experiment for a financial services client this morning where desktop conversion's gone through the roof, and we've had a 15% improvement in just a matter of 2 weeks, but mobile conversions had a detrimental impact. And we weren't looking at that level of data when analyzing it. We could put something live across the whole site that would have a positive impact on desktop, but a negative impact on mobile. So actually, we're only going to put the desktop version of those changes live because that's what the data is telling us. So really important to analyze your data in detail after the experiment and just segment things accordingly, because it can lead to better decisions that impact all of your users. And the last thing which we've touched on is all about learning and actioning at the end. So that 6-step cyclical process that I showed you at the start, you may come to the end and great, our hypothesis was correct. We've tested it based on the data. We've run an experiment. We've had a 47% improvement, and that makes the decision easy to put it live. But 50% of the time, your hypothesis won't be correct. But it's important to get into the mindset, into the culture of experimentation mindset, where you say, okay, what did we learn? Yes, we failed, but actually we need to go back to discovery. What more data do we need to form a better hypothesis? And that's a really good mentality to have. So very much encourage you when you're thinking about your CRO programs is think about not just failure as a bad thing, but see it as an opportunity to grow and an opportunity to learn. And just to kind of bookend the presentation today, I hope you found it useful. That high quantity of successful tests come from quality data. So this is a stat from an e-consultancy report which says a fifth of high-performing companies, so 21%, have conducted more than 50 experiments over the past year. So that's a lot of experiments to be conducting. That's a lot. Like, we conduct 2 experiments a month for London's Air Ambulance charity. Sometimes it's 1, sometimes it's 3, but it's all led by the data because, of course, again, to answer another question that I can see that's gone in the chat today, how long does it take to see a positive impact in ROI from CRO testing, and how long does it take to run a test? So it depends on your volume of traffic. So the higher volume of traffic you've got, the quicker it will run to significance. In terms of seeing ROI, we work with one client in financial services whereby we conducted 1 experiment that drove an uplift, and it basically paid for itself paid for our time basically over the whole year in just 2 months. That's an extreme example where it's a high volume client, but again, working with the guys at London's Air Ambulance, we were really pleased to drive 29-30% improvement in e-commerce conversion rates over the course of a 6-month period, which again helped prove that ROI really. And as I mentioned to you before, it's not just about, it is just about, I should say, getting that proportion of clear winning tests. So we average around the 50% mark as an agency, which we're really proud of. Average proportion of clear winner tests within this e-consultancy report was 35%. I've seen people say 15, 20%. It varies depending on the sector. But it is really important to base everything on quality data. You can run a high quantity of experiments if you've got loads of traffic. Absolutely, you can do that. But you need the quality data to back that up. I mentioned a few times, this is how you need to get into that CRO mindset. So we know that 6-step process is what you need to succeed. But now it's about developing the culture of experimentation. And I encourage you to look at something called the Nielsen-Norman UX Maturity Matrix, which is an 8-step program. You'll find it where it basically shows your level of UX maturity. So I'd encourage you to go on Nielsen-Norman website and see if you can pin on the map where you think you are in terms of your UX maturity, because actually getting into the culture of experimentation with CRO can be a challenge for organizations because there is no magic conversion wand. It's all about having good data to back it up. Subjective opinions matter less when it comes to CRO. It doesn't mean they're not important, but actually the data to back it up is the most important, especially when you link it in with a variety of different experts in analysis and UX research and UX design, for example. None of us know what will and won't work. I've put my name to an experiment before that I thought would be absolutely wonderful and would drive massive gains, and it tanked. And that happens. You'll sit there and go, why did that not work? That should have worked. And it can be really frustrating, but also really interesting. And that's really part of that culture of experimentation mindset. And I can see a question in the chat as well around, I guess you have to be really confident about the accuracy of the data. How often do you find an organization's data in GA is not accurate? The answer is, quite a lot of the time. you'll get into the Google Analytics account and you'll find that there are issues with the accuracy of the data to help inform those decisions. Part of the process that we do is we'll do an analytics audit basically and work closely with the client to make sure that the GA is reconfigured to ensure that accuracy of data. It's not as big a job as it sounds, because often just cleaning up some of the data within GA can be a relatively small job. Sometimes it can be a big job, but it is important to kick the tires on that GA data, as this person said within the chat. So as I said, or as I promised, I should say at the start, obviously getting started with CRO, and as I said, even if you're revitalizing your CRO program and you're wanting to really to get started on that, these are four main things really, I should say, that I would recommend you doing. The first one is user journey analysis. You can't optimize your website if you don't have complete transparency of your points of drop off. So that where part of the CRO journey is the first port of call, to make sure that you're focusing your time in the right areas. So some kind of user journey analysis, that's what we do is kind of more of a bespoke, more detailed piece of work to identify those user journeys, which we're more than happy to help you with. You need to set up analytics and reporting for success to the point that person made about GA. You can't make good decisions from bad data. So make sure your GA is set up properly and you're tracking conversions correctly, and you've got a couple of months of data to analyze. Think about GA4, think about your heat map and behavioral tools, think about how you're using other free things like Data Studio. Make sure you've got the right team of people. As I mentioned at the start, it can be very easy to just have one person working on CRO, but actually you need a melting pot of ideas. And that melting pot's really important, so you can bounce ideas off of each other and weed out the stupid ideas, but also challenge each other. And you can say, what's the data that you've used to back that hypothesis or to back that idea? Because you should always go with the hypothesis or the idea that comes from data-led people. So yeah, that mix of expertise is super important. And as I mentioned a few times before, develop that culture of experimentation. Remove the fear of failure. And that's, I appreciate it might have gone slightly over time, but I appreciate anyone that's managed to stay on. Thank you for your time today. Hopefully that was a useful introduction to conversion rate optimization, detailing why it's important for fundraising and for not-for-profits generally. And if you have any questions about your getting started checklist or any of the other points, please do get in touch. My email address is on the screen. Please visit our website if you have any questions. And thank you for your time. Very much appreciated. And thanks once again to Peter and the team at London's Air Ambulance for our continued partnership and for working together on this.
Not a problem, Ross. And just to reinforce the fact that CRO is a very valuable tool for us, and I know it will be valuable for you, all of you, if you do consider it, to undertake this activity, as well as that user journey analysis piece. Very key pieces of activity that we undertake here, which has had a significant impact in our results. So can't recommend it highly enough.
Thanks, Peter. And thanks everyone for joining. Enjoy the rest of the days and hopefully we'll speak soon.
Thanks everyone. Bye-bye.